Welcome to this explainer. Now I want you to think about a pretty radical question for a second. Does smiling simply mean you're happy? Or does the actual physical act of smiling make you happy? For decades, we've basically treated the human face as just a billboard for our internal state. But what if the geometry of your facial muscles is actually the steering wheel for your entire central nervous system? Today, we're unpacking the deep biological mechanisms that connect your physical expressions to your micromental health, your sleep architecture, and even your biological age.
So we're diving into the mind-body science of smiling. And let me be clear, we are moving way beyond that generic just think positive advice you see all over the internet. We're getting into hard neurobiology. We're going to see exactly how cognitive performance, stress regulation, and long-term vitality are all woven together in this deeply interconnected biological system. We'll explore how physical movement alters your brain chemistry, how forcing emotions at work accelerates burnout, and look at the authentic wellness tools backed by rigorous clinical data.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The anatomy of a smile. 2. The facial feedback debate. 3. The cost of faking it. 4. The smiles trial myth. And 5. Tools for authentic wellness. Let's jump right in.
Starting off with Section 1, the anatomy of a smile. How the brain rewards the face. We really need to begin by looking at the hard science of what's literally happening in your body the exact moment the corners of your mouth turn upward.
Think of it like this. Every single time your zygomaticus major muscles contract, those are the muscles in your cheeks. They send a somatosensory signal straight through the trigeminal nerve directly to your amygdala. In an instant, your brain turns into a highly sophisticated chemical laboratory. You get a hit of dopamine for pleasure and reward, you get serotonin to stabilize your mood, endorphins flood in to act as a natural painkiller, and oxytocin facilitates connection and lowers social anxiety. But at the exact same time, this action pumps the brakes on your stress response, instantly lowering your systemic cortisol levels. You are literally using your face to biohack your brain, initiating a cascade that actively reduces systemic inflammation and guards your long-term cognitive health. It's incredible.
Moving on to Section 2, the facial feedback debate, a century of scientific inquiry. This underlying biological reality leads us to a foundational yet historically debated concept in psychology known as the facial feedback hypothesis.
This whole idea that outward expressions generate internal emotions has sparked over 150 years of rigorous scientific debate. It actually started way back in 1872 when Charles Darwin proposed that freely expressing an emotion physically intensifies it. Fast forward to 2009, and this is where it gets really interesting. Neuroscientists used fMRI scans on patients who had Botox injected into their frown lines. Because they were physically unable to frown, these patients actually showed decreased activation in the brain's emotional processing centers when they were shown angry faces. And then finally, in 2022, a massive global collaboration with nearly 4,000 participants confirmed the hypothesis. Physical facial mimicry demonstrably amplifies our subjective feelings of happiness. Turns out, your face is an unbelievably powerful neuroplasticity tool.
But there's a dark side to this, which brings us to Section 3, the costs of faking it, emotional labor, and toxic positivity. Because if your face can hack your brain for the better, weaponizing this biology carries a severe physiological cost.
In our modern service-driven economy, constantly altering your facial expressions to meet corporate display rules is known as emotional labor. Just think of the retail worker or the nurse who is essentially mandated to display unwavering joy despite experiencing crushing stress and constant digital or social stimulation. This is where the biological superpower of the smile gets completely hijacked. Forcing an inauthentic expression in a high-stakes environment doesn't just feel awkward, it directly leads to deep psychological exhaustion and severe attention fragmentation. You're fighting your own nervous system.
Researchers fundamentally contrast two responses to this kind of pressure: surface acting and deep acting. Surface acting is exactly what it sounds like, pasting a fake smile on your face while inwardly feeling totally discordant. This creates chronic emotional dissonance. It drains your cognitive resources and completely destroys your capacity for deep work. Deep acting, on the other hand, protects your neurobiology. It involves something called cognitive reappraisal, where you actively try to align your internal state with that expected outward display by finding genuine empathy or real meaning in the interaction.
And the systemic consequences of chronic surface acting are frankly devastating. When you engage in toxic positivity, when you suppress your authentic negative emotions just to look the part, you literally trap your body in a persistent sympathetic nervous system response. You are stuck in fight or flight.
Over time, this leads to elevated blood pressure, a suppressed immune system, and severe disruptions to your sleep architecture, which very often manifests as chronic insomnia. Your micromental health just collapses under the weight of an unauthentic physical display, and that accelerates cellular aging and completely degrades your daily energy. So, how do we avoid this? Well, behavioral neuroscience points back to that cognitive reappraisal we just mentioned. Instead of just pushing bad feelings down behind a fake smile, you actively engage your prefrontal cortex, the executive center of your brain, to logically reframe the meaning of a stressful event. You do this before the amygdala can set off a full systemic panic alarm. It's a vital, early intervention strategy that restores healthy emotional processing, protecting everything from your gut metabolism to your sleep quality and your mental focus.
Now on to Section 4, the SMILS trial myth, clarifying clinical interventions. I want to pivot here for a second to clear up a major misconception regarding a famous clinical study that gets brought up in this debate all the time.
Despite the extremely catchy acronym, the landmark SMILES trial actually had absolutely nothing to do with facial expressions. None. It was, in reality, a revolutionary dietary trial exploring the gut-brain connection. It tested whether a modified Mediterranean diet, one rich in whole foods, healthy fats, and fiber, could effectively treat major depressive disorder. It's a perfect illustration of our interconnected biology. Your gut microbiome is directly dictating your brain health, your systemic inflammation, and ultimately your mood.
And the clinical results of this dietary trial were staggering. They yielded a number needed to treat of 4.1. In medical terms, that means that for every 4 patients utilizing this specific dietary protocol, 1 achieved total clinical remission from major depression. It literally proved that food is medicine for the brain, entirely capable of driving massive neural recovery and rewiring neural pathways damaged by chronic stress. However, true scientific literacy means we always need nuance. Critics of the trial pointed out that the recruitment website used a fruit smiley graphic and the study lacked blinding. This explicit framing likely induced a massive positive expectancy bias. Basically, people expected the diet to make them happier, so it did. It's a really crucial reminder that we have to look deeply into the methodology of even the most groundbreaking health studies and remain critical consumers of clinical data.
Which brings us to Section 5, Tools for Authentic Wellness, Somatic Practices and Mindfulness. Returning back to the physical face, there are genuinely effective, scientifically backed ways to use your expressions to boost long-term health span and cognitive preservation. Structured, somatic facial exercises are a great example. And they aren't just cosmetic. Practices like the silly rabbit actively increase blood flow and deliver essential nutrients right into your facial tissues. A landmark study published in JAMA Dermatology even found that doing 30 minutes of daily facial exercises over a 20-week period resulted in a structurally younger appearance. But from a neurological standpoint, these exercises are continuously triggering that beneficial feedback loop to your brain, quietly lowering your baseline cortisol day after day and building incredible long-term physical resilience. Then there is laughter yoga. This protocol is fascinating. It begins with simulated, completely unprovoked laughter combined with deep yogic breathing. And here is the incredible evolutionary quirk at play. Initially, your body literally cannot distinguish between fake laughter and real laughter. The physical act induces vasodilation, pumping oxygen straight to the brain. Then, through playful group eye contact, it hijacks your brain's mirror neuron system, rapidly transforming that forced laughter into completely genuine joy. Clinical trials show this actively treats depression, massively improves sleep architecture in adults, and enhances overall cognitive endurance.
For a more grounded, micro-mental health approach, mindfulness practitioners, like the late Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, strongly advocate for the gentle half smile. When you're stressed out or facing intense digital overload, simply introducing a gentle half smile creates a competing neural signal in your brain. It interrupts your automatic amygdala alarm without invalidating your true negative feelings. It's not toxic positivity. It's you taking the steering wheel of your nervous system and actively choosing to de-escalate your body's stress response.
And that brings us to a really profound realization. True emotional regulation is not the absence of emotion, it is the presence of agency. We've seen exactly how a physical expression can rewrite your brain chemistry, protect your sleep quality, and shield you from chronic systemic stress. So knowing that your body often cannot distinguish between simulated physical joy and spontaneous emotional joy, how will you choose to use the biological superpower hidden in your very next smile?